Okay, hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to this Source Alchemists call, the discussion of evolutionaries. And it's a call that we have usually on the first Thursday of every month, just as a forum for really a discussion of what's unfolding in the world, and to try and get a spiritual viewpoint on what's going on. And I have on the call with me here the Source co-creator Kevin Stein. Hi, Kevin.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see all you old friends and friends of long standing.
Yeah, and so Kevin, are you in the Space Odyssey capsule there?
Well, I'm off world. I think it sounded like a good idea at the time, at least in the United States.
Okay, so just to say, the way that this call is going to run is that Kevin and I will open some conversations, and then if any of you want to come on and contribute to come on live onto the call, then please just put a message in the chat box window, and I'll keep an eye on that chat box. And so if you're happy to come on the call, we'll bring you live, and you can contribute to the discussion. We're going to run through till about 6 o'clock, and yeah, we'll just see how it rolls. Before we launch into it, I would just like to do an invocation, which is something I'm doing with my there is a Source Inner Circle group, which is a very intense mandala of just 6 women at the heart of Source, and we've been journeying since Imbolc, and we're going through to Samhain. And I open every session I have with that group with this invocation, which is via Rita Herrey's, who is one of the Source evolutionaries. So this is the prayer of the 7 galactic directions. From the East, House of Light, may wisdom dawn in us, so we may see all things in clarity. From the North, House of Night, may wisdom ripen in us, so we may know all from within. From the West, House of Transformation, may wisdom be transformed into right action, so we may do what must be done. From the South, House of the Eternal Sun, may right action reap the harvest, so we may enjoy the fruits of planetary being. From above, House of Heaven, where star people and ancestors gather, may their blessings come to us now. From below, House of Earth, may the heartbeat of her crystal core bless us with harmonies to end all war. From the center, galactic source, which is everywhere at once, may everything be known as the light of mutual love. Aho. So, wow, such intense times. Last time we had a discussion a month ago, it was really all about coronavirus, but of course now there is just this outpouring, uprising, massive rage, and obviously we've followed suit to what's going on for you in America there, Kevin. And so just, yeah, bring us up to date with what is the mood there in America now? Because a lot of I was reposting a live stream from New York on Facebook, which was horrific. And I was watching it live at 4 a.m. Next morning, gone, completely vanished from Facebook. So it's very interesting. We're not necessarily seeing what's truly going on, but we're seeing a lot of videos emerging of police brutality for sure. So yeah, over to you, Kevin.
Well, first of all, thank you, everybody abroad, for, making this a global movement, I think, which has been really sustaining, I think. And I feel that it will continue. But in terms of the actual news, it's the same here. I mean, you catch what you can before it disappears, and also the mainstream media, I think, covers what is sensational, and a lot of that is, of course, brutal and now in the age of smartphones, we're seeing that, you know, individuals have taken on the role of monitoring the social climate, for better or for worse. I think for better, ultimately. But yeah, I think there was a, you know, finally Twitter has done something with regard to the president's tweets. I think they would do the globe a service if they just kicked him off. No such luck, I think. But the fact that they issued warnings about his inciting to violence on the heels of the murder of George Floyd is it really a step in the right direction. I think Facebook has been horrific. And I think Zuckerberg is a collaborator, a Vichy digital collaborator here.
Yeah.
But I think the mood has been anxious to begin with the virus. The United States is experiencing the first time in, I think, its history with a leader, so to speak, who is not interested in uniting at all. And I think that, you know, from my point of view, we already have a social civil war. It'll be interesting to see what happens with our upcoming elections. But beyond that, I think the anxiety has led people now. I think we've had a series of pandemics. We've had the economic meltdown, we've had the actual pandemic, and now we're having the pandemic, which hopefully will turn into a movement of change.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying in the e-shot that I sent out a week ago to promote this call, that it really does feel like, to me, that we are in the cocoon now. We are the caterpillar in the cocoon, going to, you know, everything's kind of melting down, and this process of transformation is underway. And I know we talk a lot about, you're an astrologer, Kevin. We talked a lot about the astrology and all of this retrograde movement, which we emerge out of towards the end of the year. And then there's the conjunction on the winter solstice. It really feels to me as though we are in the metamorphosis, and that it's a bit like a birth. You know, the pains get so intense, and then boom, suddenly the head's through, and all the pain's gone. And I'm really holding out a kind of hope that this metamorphosis, that there will be this emergence where the butterfly emerges, and that cocoon of the old systems, the old ways of doing things, just simply falls away if we just keep in our center and just keep strong as that process of flexing our wings takes place, you know, to strengthen our wings to get ready to fly, you know.
Well, I have hope and faith in the next generation. I mean, I think the cocoon has opened. It's been absolutely fantastic to look at how engaged millennials are and young people. You know, I know my daughter's social accounts changed overnight from lifestyle to politics, you know.
Yes.
And so I really think it's a generational shift, but without boring everybody about the astrology, I can only say that we looked at a particular movement that happens once every 250 years or so, that's associated with the fall of empires. And
Pluto return, talking about.
Yeah, so I think we're right on schedule.
Interesting. Lisa's talking about, she's been writing about this daily. Lisa, do you want to come on the call and tell us about what you've been writing about?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I decided at the beginning of this staying at home, in terms of the virus, that I wanted to capture this unique time in history, and I was kind of inspired by Samuel Pepys' diaries. You know, he kept his diaries during the Great Plague, and also through a visit many years ago at primary school to Eyam in Derbyshire, where they self-isolated so that the plague wouldn't spread. And so I was kind of stimulated by those memories, but I decided I didn't want to just keep a diary, that I would do it through the filter of the tarot, as a creative muse. And so I've been writing daily, but of course that has then moved from the virus through to, I mean, 2 days ago, the messages I got was about, the song that I got with it was Rise Up, and the lyrics to Rise Up was all about an uprising and this swell, this wave, and the messages that have been coming through have just been mind-blowing in terms of, this is just such a massive transition, a massive evolution of humankind. So yeah, and every day I never know what's going to come until I start to write. But yeah, it's been mind-blowing. And again, the analogy you gave, Rachel, of being in the cocoon, the chrysalis about to emerge into the butterfly, and the pain and the struggle that causes to emerge as the butterfly. I've even written about that in these daily writings. So everything that I'm hearing is so aligned, and the astrology that I'm following, again, it's all so aligned with the messages I'm getting, and kind of what you're explaining, what you're both talking about there.
Yeah, it's interesting talking about the astrology, that we're coming up to this solar eclipse, which is the Ring of Fire, and it's at 0 degrees of Cancer. And one of the interesting things on the source, the inner circle, that mandala, that flower of life mandala that we have at the heart of source at the moment, is that there's so much stuff around the mother and this power over the mother, you know, in all its forms. It's all in there, just in our group of 6 women. And there's very definitely something with this, the moon going over the sun, this rising of Gaia energy. And we talked a lot about it, we explored it a lot within our group. This sense of this like, no, enough now. This has to stop, and it really feels like a lot of the protesters, you can see a lot of them are young women, you know, young white women. It's really fascinating to see the feminine wave coming through of this standing strong in our no.
I think what's really interesting is the writing that I did today very much came through the sun. And it feels like a real shift is happening, and I feel that shift will really start to culminate at the solstice with the solar eclipse as well. So I just got a very strong feeling about that, and we're starting to move into a slightly different phase is kind of what I was getting today.
Yeah. And just to touch on the tarot, obviously this is 2020 and this sort of judgment year, which kind of gives me hope that as we go into 2021, we will go into the world, that enlightenment and sort of coming through the eye of the needle kind of thing. Do you feel that that's symbolic?
Absolutely, from my point of view. And also, of course, if you kind of distill that down, you've also got that emperor energy as well. So the 2020, you know, distilling that down to the judgment, distilling that down to the 4 of the emperor as well. So you've got that strong energy there of you know, the emperor trying to take control of everything. And that judgment coming, you know, it is just so many layers to it. And I think we're going to see a real breaking down of old paradigms. It's almost like we're actually going through a tower sort of situation where the old is breaking down, and all those old structures where they're trying to put more and more power in, you know, see that from some of the leaders, that actually that's being challenged on so many levels.
Yeah. Fantastic. If anyone else wants to come on the call, and anyone wants to contribute, share your views, your insights, any wisdom that you have for us, then please do that. It was also interesting that at the beginning of the year, we did the Year of the Rat event with Richard Ashworth in London. And of course, this is the metal rat year, and that metal energy, that kind of, the metal really lives in the northwest. The rat is in the north, and the metal is in the northwest. And this yang metal is a very interesting one. This kind of the yang metal of the sword and the structure and the vaccination needle, and you know, this power over with weaponry and, you know, tanks going up and down streets, that kind of thing. So it's very interesting, this yang metal. And the opposite of the northwest, this is in the Bagua, is the southeast, which is the wind and the wood. It's abundance, it's Gaia energy. So this polarity is a very interesting one that is, it seems to me, from a sort of esoteric point of view, almost like a balancing, that we have to come back into Gaia energy to balance the extreme yang metal, and we're kind of peaking in that, as you're saying, with the emperor, this patriarchal structures. Yeah, I think you're still on there, Lisa. Or Kevin, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm interested in what the atmosphere is like there.
Well, the interesting thing for me, and of course I welcome anyone to come in and share their take on it, because I'm only seeing what I'm seeing. The interesting thing I thought was the statue being pulled down in Bristol and rolled into the harbour. And I just saw there's a petition to have the statue of, I'm trying to think who it is, but there's a statue in Oxford of another slave trade person. And all these kind of Masonic icons of the patriarchal era. It's almost like that we're just wanting to rip them down now. Very interesting times, because of course all of this power, the power over, is symbolized in Masonic structures, you know, in the buildings of the powerhouse buildings with all the statues, and that symbolism is very much a way of locking down that authority figures and authority power figures. So the fact that the crowds are pulling them over Saddam Hussein's statue, it really was a bit like the Arab Spring, that the footage of that, when people jumping all over the statue, like this angry mob, is like really, really interesting. Did you see that footage, Kevin?
We did, yes, we saw that. It was quite impressive. Very much like the toppling of Confederate monuments in the South here. Okay,
yeah, I haven't seen much of that.
Same things going on.
Yeah. Do you feel, one of the conspiracy theories about this is that all of this is being driven by the Democrats in an attempt to topple Trump. What's your view on that?
I think that conspiracy theories usually are based on the lack of truth and facts, and that's what we're surrounded with, so they tend to fill the void. But I think that it's good at times like these to pull into question everything. You know, I think both parties are to blame for inaction. I mean, the footage looks the same as it did in 1968 to me of our streets, except there are less people right now. I think there are more people in more cities, but the crowds in Washington, probably because of the virus, are not what they were in the 60s. That being said, I think it's the best one-party system money can buy at this point. So I think the Democrats are offering, if you're talking about patriarchy, a reset button with a really old white guy who now has committed to at least choosing a woman as his vice presidential candidate. I think he's under a lot of pressure to choose a woman of color. We'll see. The field is very limited. The prospects are really status quo. They're not pioneering.
Yeah, it seems to
women.
Me that could be the clincher if someone like Kamala Harris, is that one of the contenders?
Yes, but she's I give her very mixed reviews. Of course, she was the Attorney General in California before she became a senator. She's one of two senators of color. But she is a prosecutor by trade, and her, I think she's compromised a great deal in her career. I think there's a woman named Susan Rice who was Obama's intelligence advisor, has much more foreign policy creds, who's much more interesting. But again, what I fear is that number one, if Trump wins, I'm looking for an exit visa. But number two, if he loses, I think what we saw in terms of the military display on the 1st, that made way for his, what I would say is his Mussolini moment in front of the church holding the Bible upside down.
Oh, yeah.
I think what I fear is if he loses, the time between election day, which is at the beginning of November, and the inauguration at the end of January will be the most dangerous months this failed state has experienced since the Civil War. This guy faces prosecution. So I think he'll fight like a caged animal and do whatever it takes, particularly if he loses. If he wins, then 4 more years of this, I can't even imagine in this country. The other pandemic that we touched on is the pandemic of the climate, and he has done more to ruin the legacy of all of the climate legislation since Nixon, and has overturned 200 regulations so far from the Obama era alone.
Wow.
And so that's one of my other fears, that, so much is happening that we're losing sight of the greatest peril that we face as a planet.
I'm just going to switch it on to gallery view and see who we've got on here. So we've got lots of people on. Hi to Jill. Hi everyone who's here. If anyone wants to come on and share views, contribute, discuss, raise any issues, raise any discussion points, then please put a line in the chat box. Is that you, Jane, who's waving? Do you want to, I think I have to let you unmute.
Oh, it's Helena, Rachel.
Oh, hi, you're there as Jane. Hi, Helena.
Yeah. You see Jane because Jane is the first name in my credit card. So I kind of have to get used to being Jane sometimes. It's the comments about Trump. I mean, it's very, very easy to think, well, Trump surely won't win after this. But actually, it could harden. Conversely, what has happened could actually harden a lot of racist attitudes. But that, of course, will be balanced out by the fact that people have actually been regarding Obama as their leader, not Trump, which, of course, irritates him immensely. And Trump is, of course, as everybody knows, totally racist. But there is a lady, she's a Somali woman, I've forgotten her name, who's in the Senate. And she is very much a thorn in his side. So, because she says what she thinks. And I think we're going to see an awful lot more of people who might not necessarily have been outspoken before, actually coming to the fore and speaking their truths. So it's really going to be interesting times, but I think everybody is hoping that Trump will not win. And isn't it interesting that that all of this has coincided with COVID, and it's amazing how a tiny bug that can probably be scarcely even seen through a microscope, has wreaked so much havoc in the world.
Mm.
So it's, and I agree with what gentleman said right now about the fact that the period between November and January will be quite tricky and dangerous.
Well, it makes me wish for a parliamentary system
Yeah.
where you could, you know, he famously lost by 3 million votes in the popular vote. And our system is just, it was one actually that was built to protect slave owning states.
Yeah.
So every state has the same amount of electors, is what they're called.
Yeah.
And it's a totally outmoded system that favors the Republican Party.
Well,
Sorry.
I was just going to say, just from a kind of zooming out a bit more, this emphasis on, you know, either red or blue, which is kind of what we got in this country. Are you going to pick the reds or the blues? Actually, no, let's pick a different system altogether. You know, let's find a different way of organizing things. You know, this to me is it's the focus that this patriarchal duality that has on, you know, choose red or blue, red or blue, red or blue, and then, oh, now it's red, now it's blue, now it's red, now it's blue. Actually, maybe we just need to have a different way of organizing ourselves.
Would we need to have a different version of the American Constitution to do that in America, at least? I don't know.
You can have ours. It doesn't seem to be working very well at present.
Yeah.
The red and blue states remind me of the choice in the Matrix.
Yes, true. But what I'm saying, for every area of life, you know, politics, education, healthcare, it just feels like it's time for not just to try and twiddle around the edges of what's already there, but to radically rethink.
But that's the great thing about it, actually. Out of all this chaos, there should come a better system, because people are having to you know, get out of ruts and think about, well, how are we going to do things now? And it's a tremendous opportunity for everybody to think of a better way of doing things.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to come back to the gallery and we'll just see who else is on. If anyone wants to come on, just please do wave. And who have we got on here now? Anyone want to contribute? Fiona, Sally Ann? Do you want to come on? There you go.
Hello. What I understand in America, that in the last election, there are about 4 million Black voters who didn't come out to vote because they would have lost a day of work. Well, if the momentum that you have now in America, if that carries on to the election, then the Democrat, and if they choose a female Black co-pilot, it may encourage the Democrats to get back in. That's, you know, a thought. Because
We're hoping.
People of color in America who, if they were going to lose one day of work, then that would deter them from voting in the election. But if they don't have work in November because of the COVID situation, the lockdown, which may well continue, then it would mean that they would go out and vote.
Well, the whole question of going out and voting has also been called into question with regard to social distancing and making one more vulnerable in large crowds to getting the virus. So there's been a movement to, a lot of states already have vote by mail as an alternative. The Trump administration is doing the best it can to stop that. So I'm hoping, like you, that this time, you know, minorities are show up at the polls, yes, whether it's mail in or in person. And I think having a candidate of color will help.
Yeah, or even, wouldn't it be amazing if Joe Biden pulled a rabbit out of the hat and made Marianne Williamson his vice president?
I don't think you're going to see anything progressive. It really is a reset button, which is maybe what the country needs.
I mean, her idea for reparations, though, I mean, that's the kind of radical thing that could really make a difference. What we've got Georgia. Let's see who else we've. I know Fiona wanted to speak. Georgia sent a message as well. Let's just bring Georgia on, and then I'll come to you, Fiona. Hi, Georgia. Can you come on video or?
Yeah, just trying.
Okay.
Second. Hello.
Hey, hi. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi. Yes, there's an amazing group. Daniel Pinchbeck is a researcher and an author, and Rory Spowers is, I don't know if you know him in UK, linked to very interesting groups. And so they're regenerativefuture.net. They're just about to do a 4-week course looking at the at systems design, because they recognise the system is broken, the system's wrong, and how to step into that. And so I just thought it would be worth sharing them.
Yeah, I think Rory Spowers was involved with Tyringham and Anton. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, same Rory.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's being bold enough to recreate from a blank canvas rather than just trying to tinker around the edges of systems which are so old and outdated and outmoded, and you know, like the education system here. I mean, it's just such a training program to turn out compliant robots, you know. Yeah, and obviously the whole health thing. We haven't really even talked much about COVID and vaccinations, but all of this emphasis on vaccinate everyone all the time for it's insane. You know, where's the encouragement to improve immune systems and health and well-being? Yeah. Okay, thank you for that, Georgia.
Thank you.
I'm going to come to Fiona next, who wanted to come on. And there's hello to everyone who's joined. Hi, Mary Claire and Robert, Caroline, Jeffy. Hi, Marion.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I just wanted to say is that is there some way that the source platform is lovely. Charlie's done a great job.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's clean. It's fresh. It's been a long time coming, but yeah. Thank you, Charlie, if you're watching.
Yeah. So well done for that. That's really, really, really fabulous. Yeah, that is such a good point, because there is a natural tendency to concentrate on all the negatives. And I'm sure that a big part of SORT is to help people concentrate on the positives. So is there a way that we could present more of the positives on the platform? Like for example, you just mentioned healing immunity. There is no guidance from the government on how people can improve their immune systems, but obviously they're really simple things. I mean, I don't think our government in the UK, Kevin, wants to get into telling obese people to lose weight, because they are so affected by this virus. But surely at this point, this is the time to be saying, this is how you can improve your health without being preachy or dictatorial.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Source, it is a river of content. And if you look at the Twitter stream, so, you know, we do tend to just post interesting stuff and videos. And so I think if anyone's got content that feels like it's important, we'll post it. But obviously the bigger vision would be to create a whole river that evolutionaries can feed, which essentially would make it more into a spiritual Facebook type platform. But that's kind of the next stage on, which was the thing that we discussed in January, but just so much has happened this year. So that's definitely the next phase to consider, of how we can harness a lot more content and make it easier for people to post on the platform. Yeah. Cool. Thanks for coming on, Fiona.
I agree that the new website looks terrific, and thank you for all your efforts in putting it together. I've just started working with an immunologist and alternative MD, so I have some related tips to building up the immune system that I'll share.
Yeah,
for the site.
A main part of the homepage is the critter stream. And so, yeah, feeding onto it. Anything.
Can I say something?
Hi, Helena. Yes, go on.
Talking about immunity, I mean, really, we, for quite a while now, we have moved so far from natural remedies to synthetic drugs. And for example, I quite often get a throat infection, but for a long time, I have not been taking any antibiotics. What I have been taking is high-strength garlic, which is antibiotic, antiviral, antifungal, and it boosts the immunity system. And that is a natural product. But that said, I appreciate that there's money involved here, and not everybody can afford to buy that. But the other thing is that drug companies are going out to places like Peru to research plants that are healing. Talk about, well, I mean, that's, and really, for so long, drug companies have been making so much money out of offering us solutions, medical solutions, when we really haven't been concentrating enough on natural remedies. And the other thing is that, again, for some time, doctors have so long been saying, oh, you must take antibiotics, take the whole course. But now they're saying, just take what you need, which is what I always did before I completely stopped taking antibiotics. I would refuse to take the whole lot if I was better. But really, an awful lot of people have fallen into that pattern of depending on somebody to tell them what to do.
Yes, it's definitely a sick care system. And yeah, and of course, we're at Source absolutely into plant medicines of every type, and also jungle medicines. I know when I was in Peru, Davina was talking about Cambo, frog medicine, which they're looking at ways they can turn that into a pharmaceutical. So very, very fascinating. Let's just thank you for that, Helena. Anyone else would like to come on the call? Give me a wave. Jill, okay. Dr. Jill Barham is, yes, health guru.
I think I probably ought to speak at this point when we're talking about immunity.
Yeah.
As a nutritional therapist, what's really interesting is that the relationship between what we know has been going on in the world in the last 5-10 years, which is the investigation into gut health and the strength of the microbiome. And it's very clear from what's going on is that the countries that have poor diets, high amount of stress, and therefore have microbiomes that are out of balance are much more prone to the severe consequences of COVID-19 than those indigenous countries or countries that have not taken the amount of antibiotics, don't suffer the stress, have more plant-based foods, have the variety of foods. This is the biggest problem that we have, is that the most of people in the Western world are just eating the same foods over and over again, and that's what's keeping the microbiome from being properly populated. So it's going to be really interesting in a few years' time to look back and look at the countries, for example, somewhere like Taiwan, Taiwan has hardly had any deaths, or Vietnam, sorry, has had hardly any deaths from COVID, and they're right next to China. And it's thought that places like that, it's because, you know, these kids and these people are out in the mud. They're not using anti-disinfectants all the time. They're not mad about cleanliness, and they're eating really good diets. And so you're absolutely right. There's been no mention at all about immunity. And if anybody does dare to mention perhaps that you should take some extra vitamin D, then it's completely quashed by the powers that be, because, you know, as Helena quite rightly says, there's no money in natural solutions.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, a completely different way of being on this planet. It really feels like that's what's being called for now. Thank you, Jill. Thanks for coming on. Marie Claire, do you want to come on? You just posted a thing in the chat box. It's always best to get you on rather than me just read things out. Marie Claire, can you? Hey. Hold on. Can we unmute you? Yeah, that's it. Hi.
Yes. Hi. Lovely to see you, Rachel, and everybody. Apologies about the video. I hate it when people put a screen up and they're not visible, but I'm trying to squeeze in several calls. But yeah, I just want to share around immunity and health-wise that I'm a huge fan of Dr. Michael Greger's works. His How Not to Die, his How Not to Die cookbook is incredible. And he doesn't take any money for his work. You know, he's been running nutritionfacts.org for, I think it's 25 years. And it takes us back to basics, real basics, that everything we need comes from nature. And it's just so common sense. It's just common sense that we've got out of touch with because of big food, big pharma, and the structures being built in this society. So I definitely recommend the book. I've got no interest in it, apart from I think it's refreshing and it's changing a lot of people's lives. It's getting back to basics. And I think we're living in a very exciting time. I think the old structures are collapsing. A new earth is being born. It's really interesting. I connected with a friend of mine who's she was the original founder, well, she was the founder of Love Lula, and deeply spiritual and a powerful businesswoman. And yet 2.5 years ago, she suffered, I suppose you'd call it a breakdown, spiritual breakdown, whatever you want to call it. She had chronic fatigue. The bottom line is she's been isolated for 2.5 years in her home in Delamere Forest. I mean, what a cool place to be isolated. And she got better, she healed as the world went into lockdown. And I had the privilege of spending some time with her recently, and she's been downloading so much stuff. And she said, this is very much the birth of a new world. And she put a different context around the social isolating, in the sense that it's giving us a chance to just clear our energies and get clear on where we are without being contaminated with lots of other people's energies. So it's like we've got a chance to get clear with our own energies. Yeah, it's very exciting, very exciting.
Marie Claire, talk to us a bit about conscious capitalism, because I know that you were involved really at the early days of Tropic and Susie Ma and everything that's happening on that kind of move from it's really interesting. We've had discussions on our source group about, it's kind of like the Northwest and the Southeast, because you've got Alan Sugar backing it with that Northwest money, but this Southeast Gaia energy of Susie Ma bringing plant-based products and ethical products through a kind of empowering women to be in micro businesses or
it's very interesting actually, because I of course come from a corporate world which was very dog eat dog and very masculine, very yang energy, and the Tropic business model is completely different. So the more you help others, the more you succeed, which is astonishing. And one of the best things is the way women support each other. There's no sense of competition, which is mind-boggling. It's interesting. Yes, I always thought at the beginning that we needed the yang energy of sugar to balance the incredible yin energy in this business. But actually, Sugar's a bit redundant, really. He doesn't really get involved anymore. You know, he's in his 70s, and it's Susie that's running the business. She's quite phenomenal. And interesting enough, the numbers for her birthday are 221188. So I think, and her name, Ma means mother, and Susan means spiritual. Means peace. So I think there's a lot more going on here. I think she's definitely fulfilling her life purpose. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, yeah. A kind of multi-level marketing bodhisattva, really.
We don't actually call ourselves multi-level marketing because we're quite different from a lot of multi-level marketing companies. But I know this isn't a call about multi-level marketing. But
yeah, sorry, I was just my little joke.
Yes, yes, darling.
Okay, Marie-Claire, thanks for coming on. Good to see you. Yeah, interesting. So many people wearing blue today. That's nice. Anyone else want to come on and share your views? Janet, I can see you there. Robert, Maria, Sue, Paul. Anyone want to just give me a wave? Yes, no? Any takers? Kevin, let's come back to you. You were talking about the health guy talking about waves of viruses coming through.
Well, I think, first of all, Georgia mentioned regenerativefuture.net, and that it has amazing insights and information about resetting and redesigning. So I wanted to mention that because that was in the group chat. Then there was a question with regard to whether or not the coronavirus would follow suit with the flu. As far as I think Sally Ann said that there was a recapitulation of planetary activity that's the same as when the Spanish flu was here. I don't know the details, Sally Ann, but I work with several physicians, including an epidemiologist. Every one of them says, unfortunately, that this will come in waves, especially now with people out in the streets. But they're expecting, several years on out.
What's your view on Bill Gates and the whole vaccination thing? Do you have a view on, do you think that he's a hero of our times, another bodhisattva, or do you think that he is the spawn of Satan? Just to polarize it a bit there.
Well, I saw him interviewed when Trump pulled out of the WHO to the tune of $600 million, which one of the physicians I work with, I asked him and I said, what do you think about this? And he said, it's like firing General Eisenhower when the boys are coming out of the hedgerows in Normandy and then cutting the budget, with the result that the Nazis win. What was astounding to me is the absolute tone deafness of somebody like Bill Gates, who was complaining about the US pulling out from the WHO, and I just kept on yelling at the screen, put in $600 million, Bill, you'll feel better. So I don't know, I think, the medical community believes that, a vaccination is the only way that this thing is going to really dissipate. But there are at least 30% of the US that will not take it. So that creates some issues ongoing. I know you're having a beautiful spring, and as the weather gets warmer, it's said that it'll dissipate because it doesn't like the heat. But once the cold comes on, it may change its tune. At least that's what the professionals tell me.
What do you
when I look at Japan, for example, they've had 18,000 cases and 900 deaths. And one of the reasons that was cited by the front page article in the Sunday New York Times was that wearing masks is customary because people live in such proximity and commute in those subways that we've seen, the tube where everybody is literally on top of one another. So they're accustomed traditionally to wear masks when they have any type of respiratory illness, whether it's a common cold or flu. And so they attribute the success that, Japan has had to that. I must say, I look at New Zealand talking about female leaders, and there's a real one where they have 0 cases now.
Yeah, it's amazing.
0. So it's possible, I think.
Yeah.
We should follow suit. We should follow suit and not follow Sweden.
So Rachel, can I ask you, it's Jill?
Yes.
Just from a trauma point of view, of the whole mask thing scares the bejesus out of me. I really don't want to wear a mask. But just from a trauma point of view, and looking at our children and looking at this generation, how do you think the mask situation is going to, not only COVID, but just the mask situation in itself, how do you think that's going to impact these children of our time?
That's an interesting one. I just think that any time you create huge fear, it's obviously the nervous system is activated, and so what trauma is truly about is about healing the nervous system. And to fully heal the nervous system, you really need to feel safe. That's one of the really key things, creating safety. And so this environment of fear that is being created, and fear is very much the tool of the patriarchal system. It's all based on fear. The more that we can create a feeling of safety, the healthier in terms of our children's and our own emotional states and our nervous system will be, because the bigger our window of tolerance, the less likely we are to be triggered. And of course, the very interesting thing about this, I'm actually reading Alice Miller's book, which it's called For Your Own Good, The Roots of Violence in Child Rearing. And it's really about how Hitler managed to come to power in Germany. And it's all rooted in the German way of parenting, which is very command control, very much about breaking a child's spirit and making a child obey orders. And that is how Hitler managed to come to power and get so many thousands of people without question to just say, well, I was just following orders when I herded the people into the gas chamber or whatever. And so our style of parenting and how we bring up children who aren't traumatized, that's really important, because of course it's very easy to trigger a traumatized child. It's very easy through psyops and to just say, go there, to frighten someone, go do this, and they'll do it because it's easy to trigger them. So to me, and certainly Juliet Yelverton, who is the expert on this, who I'm training with, in her view, trauma healing is the fundamental number one thing that we have to do to pattern interrupt and shift society. And of course, everyone can heal, but it's essential to create safety. And that's what we haven't got. And that's the danger of COVID. It's created, even just going down into Bakewell, people are sort of look away from you and scuttle away across the street kind of thing. It's very interesting how fear has crept in to society. Yeah, so it's a big subject, trauma, really big subject. Thanks for raising it, Jill. Okay, Helena, do you want to come on again? I'm looking for people who are waving.
Really, really good point about fear. But at the same time, there seems to be a whole swathe of people who are just behaving as though there isn't a problem. You know, they don't seem to exhibit any indication that they are afraid that they're going to get the virus. They're just acting normally. So in the context of what's just been said, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, people might have opinions on that. I was reading some reports today, and you don't know what's true and what's not, but there was some reports that a lot of the original theories about COVID have now been found, now they've been doing contact tracing, to be completely untrue. So the fear that was created in the beginning when less was known, it's now being revealed that it's not nearly as spreadable as it was once thought. And it was quite interesting because when this all started, there was that thing of you have to self-isolate for 14 days. And if you haven't got it within 14 days, you're fine. And here we are kind of two months into lockdown. And you kind of would have thought it would have, if you were going to get it, you would have got it by now, kind of thing. So it's difficult to know the truth, in other words. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Helena, for that. So I think we're pretty much, unless anyone has a burning question or contribution to make. Paul, did you want to come on?
Thank you, Rachel. I'm not one who's frightened of it, fortunately, at my age. Has anybody thought, though, you mentioned vaccination, you mentioned keeping up your immune system, but about treatment, has anybody considered the Leicester method of treatment?
Tell us about that.
The Leicester method was originated in the city of Leicester in the late 19th century for smallpox. They had an outbreak there and they brought in compulsory vaccination. And they found that those that had been vaccinated compulsorily were getting even worse smallpox than getting it sort of pre-vaccination. They rioted. It's a protest against compulsory vaccination, and the compulsory requirement was withdrawn. And they started to nurse the people in isolation with those that had had it and recovered. And that is how smallpox got eradicated in this country. And I lived near the last smallpox isolation hospital where the last case, oh gosh, it was in my lifetime, but I can't remember when, was nursed in isolation, and we don't get smallpox anymore. So has anybody thought about that method?
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge subject, isn't it? The whole issue of health, and I think we have to really zoom out and actually kind of listen to what Gaia's saying to us, because from an infinite intelligence point of view, COVID is just the most amazing piece of infinite intelligence to completely stop everything, to stop capitalism, to stop pollution. I mean, it's genius infinite intelligence. It's almost like Gaia has listened to our prayers and stopped everything dead in its tracks and really pattern interrupted. It's very interesting to hear the patriarchy, you know, with all of the words of we've got to battle it, we've got to fight it, we've got to destroy it, like it's this enemy. But maybe just maybe it's the greatest gift. Okay.
Definitely.
Yes. Who's that speaking? Hi there. Hello. Sorry, I don't know your name. I think you're on live. Is that Maria?
Oh, I don't know. Am I unmuted?
I think because you managed to unmute yourself, you come live, you come into, and it's interesting, everyone's wearing today.
Yes, I don't know whether you've been following the news, but I am Greek originally, and Greece has managed to contain the virus really well. First of all, I think they implemented strict measures early on, and also they put emphasis on immunity and strengthening our immune systems and eating properly, eating a variety of foods and seasonal foods, and spending time in nature. Okay, it was restricted, but they put emphasis on being out in nature and connecting with nature and the animals and the birds and the trees.
Yes.
You know, every time I listen to the news here, I didn't hear anything about building strong immunity.
We were talking about that earlier, yes.
To the news in Greece, there were doctors coming on and they were saying, this is what you need to do. You need to be eating properly. You need, because somebody with a strong immune system, well, can have the virus, and it may be even unnoticed. You know, it may be like the common cold.
Yes.
Because of the immune system. And the emphasis was, make food thy medicine and medicine thy food, you know, as the old Hippocrates, you know, was saying. And generally, you know, the power of prayer and the power of being together, even though people were not allowed to mix.
Yes.
But so there was a totally different emphasis.
Yeah.
Totally different emphasis.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Maria. I mean, I think we have to look at it in the context of the bigger plan, and I have posted on Facebook about this. You have to look at it from the possibility that we are being set up through fear to accept vaccination, which will have nanotechnology in it, which will be linked into AI, which will be linked into policing by drones. I mean, all of these things you can see potentially coming down the line. And I just really, you can almost see the patriarchal system wanting to lock down the people literally with command control, policing, and through AI technology tracking. I mean, this is one of the things that I think is a real danger point for us. So holding a vision of that more Gaia in tune with nature and resisting the kind of complete patriarchal control system going absolutely into yang metal, which is kind of what it would be. I think that's a really, really important thing for us all to hold.
There's an ancient saying that remember who you were before you were born and you will never fear again.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. That's a lovely note to end on. And thank you for joining us from LA, from Spaceship Command in LA. And yeah, thank you to everyone who's come on the call. It's been really great to see so many people. Thanks for your contributions. And I have recorded this session, so I may well put it out onto the YouTube channel, unless anyone's got any burning objections to that. But I do think it's really important to share this content and just, you know, this kind of evolutionary discussions as an alternative to the mainstream ways of doing things. So yeah, sending you all lots of love, and yeah, have a wonderful evening. Thanks for coming on, and hopefully you can join us next month, Thursday at 5 p.m. UK time. Lots of love. Bye for now.
Bye, Rachel. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.